Welcome to Playful Beginnings, a podcast about the magic of play therapy for therapists, students, and anyone interested. In our podcast, we'll explore the deeper understanding of play therapy and the skills we use when working with children.
We hope to help you understand the why behind what we do and how it helps kids heal and grow. I'm Dr. Christy Opiola, a working play therapist and university professor in North Carolina.
I'm Dr. Maggie Parker, a play therapist and professor in DC. Good morning, Christy.
Morning, Maggie.
How are you today? Happy what?
It's November.
No, yeah. So this will probably be released in December, but we're recording in November.
Yes. So happy December, everyone.
Yeah. And this year has gone by so quickly. And we just celebrated our 1-year anniversary. So that's so exciting. And we're so glad that you guys keep coming to listen. So please make sure to like, subscribe, share, leave reviews, anything that to help, keep it going. And yeah, we just like to hear from you.
We're appreciative. We're appreciative of our listeners and really value this time that Maggie and I get to spend together every week. It is a highlight, I think, on both of our calendars to get to, talk CCPT.
Yeah. Yeah.
And get to speak with some really cool people, both in the CCPT world, but also in the play therapy world as in general. And so.
Yeah. And so what we were going to talk about today actually came up from two different kind of things. We had Dr. Mary Bennett on, and as we were kind of preparing, we were having a discussion about executive functioning. And this is also something that Tisha Moon at Family and Child Place in Vienna, Virginia, had reached out about as well. And so we don't want to steal Mary's thunder, but it was just such an important topic. And I think she's going to have more to come on this, but we just really wanted to kind of explore what executive functioning is. I think we hear that term all of the time, especially when working with parents and teachers and pediatricians. It's kind of a buzzword, and sometimes we don't know exactly what that is or what it means or the developmental nature of it. And so we're going to talk about those things, and then we're going to also talk about how child-centered helps in children's development of those skills. And so it may be that, again, it's another two-parter, but we want to make sure that we're getting you all of the information so that you feel confident sharing this information with the people that you're talking with, and how CCPT aligns.
And I think it's sometimes hard when we're put on the spot, by maybe a school personnel, a referral that may not choose because they don't see how it aligns with like executive functioning skill development. Or when parents are really kind of pushing this, how do we respond to that? And how do we state that, wait, no, CCPT does support executive functioning in many ways. Let's figure out exactly what they're looking for, and then we can highlight how we want to respond to those challenges that we get as a CCPT play therapist.
Yeah. And this actually happened to me. The last time I was in practice, I had a parent who was like, but are they working on executive functioning? I want you to teach them executive functioning. And I felt I did not have the wherewithal. And so this is also for me and my growth. So I want to be really transparent in that as well, that I didn't quite have the tools. And so I think this would have been helpful if I had been able to listen to it a year or two ago.
And to be honest, I think oftentimes we are in the moment kind of responding to these requests. I mean, I know I've gotten requests similar, and I don't know if I handled them well, right? So it's nice to be able to talk about and have a place to lean back into when maybe it comes up for you, or when you're working on treatment goals or different things that you are knowing maybe why CCPT could be a helpful intervention.
Yeah, absolutely. So Christy, do you want to give kind of an overview of how you understand executive functioning?
Yeah, so my understanding is that it is a cognitive processing that is developed over time. It's not something kids are born with. It is something that they have to develop over time. And kind of the key parts to this process are things like regulation skills, so regulating emotions and behaviors, the ability to stay focused and maintain attention to something. It's also about problem solving, organizing, not just physically organizing, but how our brain organizes information, and the ability to shift, right? So to switch tasks when they're needed. So not to the, extreme of multitasking like many of us do on a day-to-day basis, but, simple task management between multiple demands placed on the child.
Yeah. And there are so many demands placed on
Yeah.
children.
I do
It's,
want to say also that there's, from my understanding and a little bit of research I did before here, there's three main areas to executive functioning. One is self-control, one is cognitive flexibility, and the third one is working memory or holding and manipulating information, is how they kind of describe it.
yeah. And it's kind of this higher order skill, right? It takes some time, and so I think we need to really also remember that kids' brains are developing and they're learning new things, and that they don't always have that capacity to do things the way that we maybe would do them. And so I this kind of idea, it's like the air traffic control system. It's kind of making sure things are going where they need to go, or that
Mhm.
you're able to kind of direct behaviors and emotions in certain ways. And that's hard to do.
I think about how stressful that job is, right? There's so many balls up in the air. There's so much demand placed on you. It would make sense when we look at it developmentally, while why kids might have emerging moments in different parts of these executive functioning areas, and refinement is needed, right? So it doesn't all happen simultaneously, or they gain a skill and then they've mastered that skill, right? That those skills are going to shift as their cognitive capacity and ability continues to evolve, because we know the brain is not fully functioning. In particular, the prefrontal cortex and the cortex. That's one of the last areas of the brain to fully develop, and they say it's in the late 20s that
Yeah.
it's fully functioning to its greatest capacity. So I share that because the kids, it's not one of those things where it just happens and then they've got it permanently, which sometimes parents don't always understand, or school personnel are, you've been working on this. They had a great week last week. Why are they falling apart this week? And my explanation is normally they've had some type of developmental leap.
Yeah.
Because as the brain continues to, explode with activity during childhood, right, it has to centralize its focus sometimes. And so they sometimes can be really great in this area, and at other times it could feel like a moving target, and that they're the same skill they showed a week before may be a little weaker this week. And it's about the constant refining, going back to supporting components that gets them to that really mature adult brain.
And I think that, it's a difficult process for typically developing children, and it can be made more difficult by those who maybe have differences in the ways in which their brains are working. Because even thinking about executive functioning right now in my own life, it's like I can be organized at a point, and then now I had put all of my stuff on my desktop in a way that was organized, and I'd organized my box files. And now, if you were to look at it, it is the most chaotic. And I'm good, didn't organize, and I have a bunch of random papers everywhere with notes on them that I have to. So it's something that is constantly being worked on, and that everyone's going to have different skills and strengths as they engage in these ways. And not every one person is going to be able to do things the way that perhaps you would do them. And I think that's really important too for teachers and parents, is that some kids are going to be different. I think about Molly, and she is very organized in particular. And we talked about this, Christy, with you too, that like, where everything is, but for anybody else walking in, you're like, this is chaos. And it's, no, I think you said my coat is underneath the pile of laundry in the corner of the room, and that's how Molly is. She's
The
like,
bed halfway through under the red shirt. And my mom's like, I don't even know how you know this. And I'm like, no, it's there. And she's like, it's exactly where you told me growing up.
yep,
If you clean my room, I couldn't find a darn thing.
no,
It's true in my house now. Well, right now it looks like the world has exploded. But I do also want to say that the prefrontal cortex and the cortex is also the most, that's not a true statement, is impacted by stress
yeah.
and demand. And so the higher the stress and the higher demand, the more impacted the cortex can be. So, as we're talking about this, not only how people function differently, we also need to look at environmental influences on kids. So, in some of the kids I see, I really see how this plays out when we get closer to state testing time.
Yeah.
And, we don't always set up a world where kids are going to be successful because we put a lot of pressure and stress. We change their environments. We're constantly making these shifts and we're expecting them to just shift with us. Some kids may be able to do that, and some may have a more challenged time in doing that, which would impact their results. And so I do want to share that. And then just in day-to-day life, right? When a really stressful event is happening and we're expecting kids to be able to be self-regulated or to be able to think before they speak, or do you know what I mean? All of those
Really
things
hard.
may be challenged in those moments for kids, and that would impact how they respond, how they're reacting, and which might surprise the adults in their life.
Yeah. And it could be made difficult too. We had this conversation in my play therapy class this weekend, but if, class sizes are bigger and that means they're louder and they're chaotic. And so that can also impact kids' ability to kind of do these things. I,
Because part of executive functioning is filtering out shit, right? And that's sorry, excuse my language, filtering out stuff.
there we go. I was like, ooh, Christy was the first one to drop a bad word. Usually it's me.
Oh, we probably want to edit that out, but to filter out, all of the the chaos around them, that is part of that shifting attention and focus and being able to get focused. And so if there's a lot, as you're saying, Maggie, if classroom sizes are bigger, they're louder, more kids are struggling with self-regulation and the ability to control themselves, that is going to impact every student in the class.
Yeah, it would impact the teachers and the parents, right? When it gets louder, when it gets more chaotic, we tend to respond differently. And
Mhm.
it's hard to kind of figure out as a young child how to manage those things or identify those coping skills. One of the things that I gained from Dr. Gary Landreth in graduate school, yes, a lot about play therapy, but he was like, it's okay if you need to take a nap under your desk. And what that is one of the most impactful things, and it's changed my life. When the most stressful thing I experienced in my doc program was probably our comprehensive exams, where I had a week to write 5 12-page papers to determine whether or not I could still be a doc student. And anytime I would get blocked or overwhelmed or I couldn't think of the answer, I was like, I'm going to do what Dr. Gary Landreth said. And I would go and take a nap. And as soon as I laid down and allowed myself to relax, the answer came. So I could get up and then go write, because sometimes the stress blocks it. And so, but it's hard for kids. They can't just go take a nap. They can sometimes go to a calm down
Don't
corner.
have the freedom, right? They
They
don't,
don't
they
have
don't
the
make those decisions.
right. They have to stay in the classroom. And so that can be really tough. And so considering those things, I think that can be really helpful as you're explaining this to parents, to administrators, to teachers.
Yeah.
Something else I think is helpful is if we kind of look at kind of what this looks like developmentally through different stages, because sometimes I think that we have pretty high expectations of kids and their capacities. But when we really look at what is developmentally happening within their lives, they're not as cut and dry as we would think, right?
Two things I was going to say. I think we're really trying to rush development. We're wanting kids to be further along than is developmentally responsive. And a lot of their environments are not developmentally responsive. So the idea of sitting still for if it's half a day kindergarten or a full day kindergarten, that's if we look at where kids are developmentally, that's going to really challenge this idea of developing executive functioning because it's not matching how they learn and how they grow.
Yeah.
And then I forgot what else I was going to say.
It'll come back.
Maybe
Yeah.
why in play therapy our responses are 10 words or less, right? Because we don't want to overwhelm their system. And so short, sweet, to the point.
Yeah. And remaining calm and regulated when they're having emotional outbursts, which is really hard to do. And I lost my cool the other day and it did not go well. A lot of tears on my part, a lot of tears on their part, but also opportunity to repair, because sometimes it's not what we do, but what we do after what we did. And so, using those opportunities when then you become out of control in those moments, to be able to come back and say, I also make mistakes and this wasn't okay. And I don't like how I did that, I think is really important. And it helps them again, that's kind of scaffolding and helping them develop that for themselves. And then they still need a lot of consistent structure, and they're able to engage in conversations about feelings and choices. And so really kind of looking at that and having those conversations of like, you're really frustrated and so you ripped up your paper, this was really hard for you and you felt like you couldn't do it. And so being able to, I guess, scaffold that language as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I really appreciate the edited book by Ray, The Therapist's Guide to Child Development, because I think it's an area for play therapists. One of our goals is to really understand child development, to know how normative maybe a behavior coming into our playroom or the whole age group. We see a lot of 7-year-olds in play therapy because they tend to be more morose. They're challenged in different aspect that challenges their environments. And so, right, we get a big increase of kiddos in that age range coming into play therapy and knowing when we're going to goal set and other stuff, understanding the development side of it so that we can be responsive and set realistic goals for kids within the play structure or the playroom.
Well, I think this was really helpful. And so next week, what we're going to do is talk about how CCPT and the skills that we use can align with executive functioning.
Build executive functioning through our CCPT skills. Yeah.
Yeah. But I hope that this is helpful just for your own understanding. And then also as you're having conversations with parents and caregivers and teachers, that you can use this also as you're framing that. And then we'll add on to it in our next episode.
Yeah. Thank you all for listening. Can I do a call out really
Yeah.
quick? Okay. So someone I know who listens to the podcast was sharing with me that her partner is also listening to the podcast. So John, I wanted to say thank you for listening.
Hey,
It
everyone.
helps. And Lauren had shared that he listens with her, and then she has seen him talk through things with his son about some of the things he's learning here. And his son is in that younger age group, so it's kind of fun to hear, Maggie, we're having a little bit of an impact for parents, for play therapists, and then for co-parenting places to be helpful. And so, John, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, John.
Yeah, we're excited to have you as a listener, and we hope this is helpful. And email us at info@playtherapyspace.com if you have a certain subject that you want us to cover as a parent. We are happy to explore different topics.
Yep. Follow us on Play Therapy Space on Facebook or the Play Therapy Space on Instagram. We're on Pinterest and YouTube. And yeah, we hope you keep listening.
Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, Christy.